I had my best friend arrested for sleeping with my girlfriend. I never thought I'd be the kind of person to share something like this. But maybe telling this story is the only way to let it go. Or maybe, deep down, I just want someone to understand how everything fell apart. Rachel and I grew up together. We met when we were around 6 or 7. And from that point on, it felt like we were always in each other's lives. By the time we turned 16, we were dating. At 18, we moved to the city for work. And by 20, we were married. We even bought our first house together. Everything felt solid, like we were building something permanent. At 22, Rachel got pregnant. We were going to have a boy. I remember how excited we were planning the nursery and talking about names. It was one of the happiest times of my life. Then it ended, completely and without warning. 5 weeks before she was supposed to start maternity leave, Rachel went in for another day at work. She never came home. A massive shelving unit collapsed on her. It killed her instantly. Our son too. There was nothing anyone could do. 2 of her coworkers survived, but barely. 1 was paralyzed. The other lost a leg. Later, I found out the company had ignored safety warnings. They were supposed to replace the shelving months before, but they chose to cut costs instead. They saved a few dollars, and I lost the love of my life and our unborn child. The company offered a settlement. They called it compensation. I called it blood money. I wasn't interested in keeping quiet or letting them avoid responsibility. I took them to court and made sure the story was heard. It took 3 years, but it was worth it. The case drew media attention. Politicians got involved. The company paid fines, fired executives, and even saw some of them go to jail. I received a payout that was 10 times higher than their original offer, but no amount of money could fill the hole Rachel left behind. During all of that, I kept working. I was in telecommunications and constantly traveling. My mother moved in with me during those years. She cooked, she cleaned, she kept me from falling apart. If it weren't for her, I don't know what would have happened to me. Eventually, I asked my company to let me work part-time from my hometown. I needed something familiar. They agreed. I started splitting my time between the city, the road, and my old town. A year later, I bought a house back in that town. It wasn't big, just enough for one person to find some peace. I thought I could build something quiet, something new. I didn't know it yet, but that house would become the stage for everything that came next. For a while, life felt calm again. Not happy exactly, but manageable. I had my routines. I traveled for work, came back to my small hometown house, visited with my mother, kept to myself. It wasn't joy, but it was quiet. After everything I'd been through, that was enough. Then Harry showed up. He was the managing director of our hometown branch and an old acquaintance from childhood. We hadn't been close growing up, but after I moved back, we reconnected. He was outgoing and full of energy. The kind of guy who could host a barbecue on short notice and still make everyone feel welcome. We became good friends. Or at least I thought we did. One Friday, I had just gotten back from a long trip when Harry invited me to a small party he was throwing that night. I wasn't in the mood at first, but something told me I needed to go. Maybe I just didn't want to be alone that evening. That's when I met Catherine. She was new in town, recently hired at our branch. Harry introduced us and we hit it off immediately. She was friendly, smart, funny, and somehow, in ways I still can't explain, she reminded me of Rachel. Not in the way she looked or spoke, just the feeling she gave me. That comfort, that ease. We started talking more after that night. Then came coffee dates. Then dinners. Slowly, cautiously, we started seeing each other. I kept expecting it to feel wrong, but it didn't. It felt like the first time in years that I could breathe without guilt sitting on my chest. 2 years passed like that. I took things slow, but eventually I asked her to move in with me. She said yes. I made space in the house, rearranged the furniture, even cleared out a closet. It felt like another fresh start. My parents liked her. Even Rachel's parents, who had stayed in touch, said they were glad I was doing better. I don't know if they meant it completely, but I appreciated the sentiment. For a while, things were good. We cooked together. We laughed together. She left little notes in my suitcase when I traveled for work. They always made me smile. We weren't a perfect couple, but we were building something that looked a lot like happiness. I let myself believe it. That was my mistake. It started slowly, so slowly that I didn't notice it at first. The first change came in the form of shorter calls. I would be out of town for work, and our usual video chats would end abruptly. She'd say she was tired, or that something came up. I brushed it off. Everyone gets busy sometimes. Then my neighbors started making comments. One mentioned seeing a car parked in the alley behind my house on nights when I was away. Another described it in passing, saying it looked like Harry's. I laughed it off, said he probably just swung by to drop something off. But then it happened again, and again. I found clothes that didn't belong to me in the laundry. A hoodie, some socks, a gym towel. I asked her about them. She smiled and said Harry had been stopping by to talk business. He must have left them behind. Nothing more than that. I wanted to believe her. I really did. But something felt off. The house didn't feel the same when I walked into it after a long trip. There was a tension in the air, a silence that wasn't peaceful. I started to feel like a guest in my own home, but every time I brought it up, she brushed me off, told me I was being paranoid, that I was imagining things, and for a while, I believed her. I thought maybe I was projecting. After all, I'd been through a lot. Maybe I was still holding on to grief. Maybe I didn't know how to trust people anymore. That belief lasted until the day I came home early. I had just closed a major contract with a new client. The trip wrapped up 2 days ahead of schedule. Instead of staying in the city, I booked an early flight and decided to surprise her. I thought it would be a sweet moment. I'd walk in, kiss her hello, maybe cook dinner together like we used to. As I drove into town, I remembered the comments from my neighbors, the ones about the car in the alley. So instead of pulling into my driveway, I circled around to the back entrance. That's when I saw it. Harry's car, parked in the alley behind my house. It wasn't parked like a guest's car. It was tucked in close to the hedge, hidden from the street. My stomach dropped. I sat in the car, staring at it, hoping I was wrong, praying that there was some innocent explanation. But I already knew. I got out and walked toward the back gate, quietly, carefully, and then I looked through the kitchen window. They were in there, together, in my kitchen, on my counter. Catherine and Harry were having sex like they didn't have a care in the world. I didn't make a sound. I didn't knock on the glass. I didn't shout. I just stood there, frozen, watching. My heart felt like it had stopped beating. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't move. Eventually, I turned and walked back to my car. I sat in the driver's seat and stared at the dashboard. I had been here before. Not this exact situation, but this exact feeling. That moment when your life changes in an instant and nothing will ever be the same. I wanted to cry, but I couldn't. I was numb. And then, as the minutes passed, the numbness gave way to something else. Anger. Cold. Steady. And sharp. Not the kind of anger that lashes out in the moment. The kind that waits. The kind that plans. I didn't want to scream. I wanted them to suffer. I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't. Catherine was home by the time I arrived. She greeted me like everything was normal, smiled, hugged me, asked how my trip went. I smiled back, kissed her on the cheek, and lied just as easily. We had dinner together like we always did. I even asked about her week. She told me about work, gossiped about coworkers, told me she missed me. It was almost impressive. Almost. She went to bed early, said she was tired. I told her I'd join her later. Instead, I sat in my home office and started planning. I didn't want to just end things. That would be too simple, too easy. I wanted them both to feel something deeper. I wanted them to lose something they cared about. I wanted to leave a mark. Harry made it easy. He had a drug habit. Not the kind that makes headlines, but enough that he kept it hidden. Weed, some coke. I knew about it because I'd accidentally seen it once at his place. He quickly covered it up. I pretended not to notice. Back then, I didn't care. But now, that secret was going to be useful. I called a few contacts, people I had worked with in the past, not the clean-cut ones, the ones who didn't mind crossing a few lines. I asked if they had anything they were willing to part with. Small amounts, just enough to make something believable. Within a few days, I had what I needed. I waited about a month, kept everything normal on the outside. Then one weekend, I invited a few people over for a barbecue. Harry included. It went exactly as I hoped. We grilled. We drank. I made sure Harry drank more than usual. Laughed with him. Shared stories. Told him how grateful I was to have a friend like him. He ate it up. When it got late, I told him to crash on the couch. He agreed. That night, while he was passed out, I planted the drugs in his car. I also placed some of my personal items around, his trunk and glove box. These were things I had quietly removed from my house earlier, intending to report them as stolen. The biggest stash went into the spare tire compartment. I knew he wouldn't find it. Not anytime soon. The next day, I offered to drive him home. He was hungover and didn't argue. Once there, I followed him into the house under the excuse of needing to use the bathroom. While he groaned on the couch, I slipped a few more items into his apartment. Nothing flashy, just enough to create a trail. Step 1 was done. Now I had to make it look like something had been taken. A few days later, I packed a small bag, smashed a glass panel on my back door, and flew out of town for work. I made sure to leave the door open just enough for someone to find it. The moment I landed, I had several messages waiting. One from my mom, one from Catherine, one from the local police. My mom had gone to check on the house and found the broken door. She called the cops. Catherine was in tears. The police wanted me to come in and give a statement. I called them all back, told them I was on a business trip and would be home in a week. Asked my dad to help organize the security system install, just in case. Everyone agreed it was a smart move. When I got back, I made a show of checking every room. I pointed out what was missing, filled out a report. Then I had the security company walk us through the new system. That was when Catherine asked the question I had been waiting for. What if we want to do something private? Like, in the house? Are the cameras always recording? The technician smiled. Said a lot of people ask that. Showed us how to turn off certain cameras through the home computer. Then he showed me how to set up notifications for when someone tried to disable the system. He had no idea he was helping me build the next trap. Everything was moving according to plan. But there was one more thing I had to be sure of before I pulled the trigger. I needed to protect myself legally. I had no idea if Catherine might try to come after me for money once things ended. We'd been living together for a while, and I didn't want any surprises, especially not involving Rachel's estate. I turned to an online legal advice forum and explained my situation in broad terms. They pointed me toward a local attorney. I met with him the next day. He walked me through everything. Turns out, despite living together, Catherine and I hadn't crossed the line into a legal partnership. In our country, there are specific rules for when a couple is considered de facto. We hadn't lived together long enough. She didn't pay rent. I paid all utilities. None of her official documents listed my address. Legally speaking, she had no claim to anything. Still, I asked the lawyer to draw up a document, something official and airtight, just in case she tried to stir up trouble later. He agreed. Now that I was protected, it was time for the final setup. Around this time, I got news from my company. They offered me a major promotion. It meant I'd no longer have to travel constantly. I'd be running the team from our city headquarters. They were even considering expanding our presence in the surrounding towns based on the success I'd had. It was everything I wanted. A clean break from the past, a real future, and it gave me the perfect timeline. I had 6 weeks before the transfer would go through. 6 weeks to finalize everything. First, I spoke to Harry, told him I was thinking about proposing to Catherine, asked if he could quietly approve her vacation time for a surprise trip I was planning. I wanted to send her and 2 friends to a tropical spa resort for a week. Harry grinned and gave me a hug. Said it was about time. I smiled back, knowing exactly what he was really hugging. He approved the leave without question. Later that night, I told Catherine the good news. She screamed when I handed her the booking confirmation. All expenses paid. No questions asked. A full week away with 2 friends at one of the best resorts in the region. She asked why I was doing it. I told her I was getting ready for something big. I said I couldn't join her because of work, but that she'd understand everything when she got back. She hugged me so tight I almost couldn't breathe. It was the best lie I ever told. She had no idea she'd never see me again. The moment she left town, everything went into motion. She and her friends left on a Sunday. They were packed and excited, laughing as they climbed into the car. Catherine kissed me goodbye and said she couldn't wait to see what I had planned when she returned. I smiled and told her it would be unforgettable. She had no idea how right she was. As soon as they were out of sight, I packed my own bags. Not for a business trip, not for a client, for freedom. I had already arranged 2 weeks of personal leave. I flew across the country and checked into a small cabin by the coast. Just me, the ocean, and time to breathe. I turned my phone off. I wanted no part of the fallout until everything was done. While I was gone, I kept tabs on the house through the security system. My cameras sent alerts anytime one of them was turned off. I had set the system to email me every time someone tried to disable even one feed. Catherine had asked how to do that for privacy reasons. I knew exactly what she meant. And just like clockwork, the alerts came in. Every few nights, the same pattern. Certain cameras off, hours of silence. Then the cameras turned back on. Harry wasn't being subtle. After 2 weeks of recorded proof, I booked my flight home. On the way back, I stopped just outside of town. I didn't go straight to my house. Instead, I circled around to the alley behind it, same as before. Harry's car was there, right on schedule. I parked a few houses away and made my first call. I blocked my number and told the local police that I was a neighbor. I said I'd noticed a man sitting in a car behind my neighbor's house, that he kept handing things through his window to people in passing vehicles, that I was concerned. He might be dealing drugs. Then I gave them the license plate. They told me someone would check it out. Next, I called Catherine. I told her I was on my way home, said I couldn't wait to see her before she flew back to the city, said I'd be there in 10 minutes. From my phone, I watched the camera feed. It was chaos. Within seconds, Harry was throwing on clothes, grabbing his things, bolting through the back door. He jumped into his car and tore down the alley. He didn't make it far. A police cruiser rounded the corner at the perfect moment. They flipped their lights on and followed him. I watched from a distance as they pulled him over. Meanwhile, I pulled into my driveway, calm and collected. Catherine greeted me with a nervous smile. She had no idea that her little secret was already unraveling. That night, we went through the motions. Dinner, small talk, bedtime. She fell asleep quickly. I didn't sleep at all. The next morning, Catherine and her friends left for the airport. They had no idea it would be the last time they saw that house as it was. I waited until they were gone, then started packing. I had already called a friend of mine who worked for a moving company. He showed up with a team that afternoon. I apologized for the short notice, but he didn't ask questions. I had everything organized. Labeled boxes, instructions on what to send to storage and what to take with me to the city. I didn't pack any of Catherine's things. I had already done that. Her belongings were boxed and placed in a separate unit I had rented under her name. I left a key and access details in a sealed envelope. Later that day, the police called me. They had arrested Harry. They said he had been pulled over for suspicious behavior, and during the search, they found drugs in his car. Some of the items matched the ones I had reported stolen weeks earlier. When they searched his apartment, they found more. They asked if I could come in to identify the property. I told them I'd be right there. When I showed up, I made a show of going through everything. I identified what was mine. Acted surprised. Acted grateful. They said an investigation would follow, but that Harry was being charged with multiple offenses. The town lit up with gossip. Harry was fired within the week. Word spread quickly, especially in a small place like ours. People talked, people whispered, and just like that, his reputation vanished. I made one last visit before leaving town. I went to my parents' house and sat down with them. I told them everything, minus the details I didn't think they needed to know. I told them I had been promoted and was moving back to the city. I told them Catherine wouldn't be coming with me. They were surprised, maybe even a little disappointed, that I hadn't come to them sooner. But they supported me. We shared drinks that night. We laughed a little. We cried a little. I hugged them both before heading back out. There was one final stop. I went to Becky's place. Becky had been Rachel's best friend growing up. She was the only person I had trusted with the full story. She helped me with the storage unit and made sure everything was ready for what came next. I handed her a sealed manila envelope. Inside was everything Catherine needed to know. Proof of the cheating. Copies of the security footage. A letter from my lawyer. A note explaining how to collect her belongings. And one final message from me. She wouldn't be hearing from me again. I drove back to the city that night. No stops. No second thoughts. The moment I crossed the city line, it felt like something had lifted. Like the weight I'd been carrying for years had finally been set down. I turned my phone back on the next morning. There were missed calls. Dozens of them. Voicemails, texts, all from Catherine. She had come back early. Someone tipped her off that something was going on back in town. She showed up to find the house completely empty. For rent sign out front. Locks changed. Her key didn't work anymore. Panicked, she went to my parents' house. They didn't let her in. Didn't even let her finish speaking. Just closed the door in her face. Eventually, she got in touch with Becky. Becky told her she had a package to deliver. I never heard her exact reaction, but based on the messages that followed, I can imagine. She accused me of setting up Harry, of lying, of being manipulative and cruel. She called me a coward. She begged for explanations, then demanded them, then begged again. I didn't reply. She never came to the city. I never saw her again. From what I've heard, she was transferred out of state soon after. The gossip had gotten too loud. People talked, people pointed. Her work reassigned her to administrative tasks until things cooled down. Then they moved her. As for Harry, last I checked, he was facing charges. It was his first offense, so he probably wouldn't serve long. Maybe just a few months. But his career is over. His reputation is gone. He won't be coming back to that town anytime soon. People have asked me if I feel guilty. Honestly, no. Harry knew what I had lost. He knew what Rachel meant to me. He saw how long it took me to climb out of that hole, and he still chose to betray me. Catherine looked me in the eye every day and lied. She kissed me and lied. She built a future with me on top of a lie. I didn't hurt them. I didn't scream. I didn't hit anyone. I didn't burn their things or break their windows. I simply pulled the curtain back and let the truth do the damage. Some people say revenge is petty, but sometimes it's the only way to close a chapter.
The case has been heard. The stories have been told. Now it's your turn to judge. Leave your verdict in the comments. Like, share, and subscribe. The Court of Stories is always in session.